following video is going to cover some key points to enable you to create the best PowerPoint presentation possible. Where should a PowerPoint presentation focus the gaze of the audience? The gaze of the audience should be primarily on you. The PowerPoint presentation is there to give visual aids or bullet points to remind you of the next topic that needs to be discussed. So, how do you keep the focus on yourself more than the screen? Well, the human brain has a few odd traits. It tends to focus to the brightest thing in the room. So if you use a white background with black text, this is generally where people's eyes will gaze. So I personally believe a dark background with white text enables the gaze of the audience to toggle between the screen and yourself. So look at the difference. I'm automatically pulled there. It's like turning a light on and off. So guideline 1, keep the background dark and the text light. Also, you want to be wary of having a bright background and lots of animated graphics that detract from the story you're trying to give, or should I say, detract from the audience looking at you, who is supposed to be giving the lecture and passing on the information. I mean, you could do something else to bring the gaze back to yourself. The next mistake many people make is context. Just because you write the slide and use words and sentences that make perfect sense to you, it does not mean your audience will understand what it is you're trying to say. Let's understand context. I've written a sentence on the screen. Do you 100% understand what I mean by that sentence? The trouble is, there is no chance you can possibly understand what I mean by that sentence because there is no context. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to highlight a few of the words from this sentence, and you tell me how the context changes. I did not say you stole the pen. I did not say you stole that pen. I did not say you stole the pen. I did not say you stole that pen. So there you go. You can see that depending on which word I highlight in a sentence, the context of what I mean can dramatically change. So, second point to keep in mind, don't presume what you've written is being understood. The human mind really can't focus properly on two things at once. So the next mistake you don't want to make is two subjects on a single slide. So on the left, I'm discussing broccoli, and on the right, I'm discussing spinach. Way too much information on one screen. Even as you're talking and trying to explain this, the audience's eyes are darting all over the place. From words back to the heading, back to words, back to the heading. The next big mistake is too many items on the screen, particularly graphics. You don't want your audience to have to do any work. If their brain is doing work, they're no longer listening to you. Let me give you an example. On the next slide, I'd like you to count all the red X's you see, and you've got 3 seconds to achieve this. Here we go. Now, I'm sure all of you got the correct number, but the trouble is you probably had to go and physically count them with your eyes. Now, while you were counting them, you were no longer listening to me as the presenter. Now I'm going to do the same test again. I'm going to put up a number of squares. I'm going to ask you, how many of these do you see in 3 seconds? Here we go. 5. But the difference this time is you knew it was 5 instantly. You didn't have to physically count them. If you can work out that there was 5 immediately, then you, as the audience member, your focus came immediately back to me. Also, if you are going to use graphics, keep the animation to a minimum. Otherwise, again, you could be making it hard work. Ah, 5. How do you keep eyes and brains focused on a presentation? Well, as I've said before, keep the background dark. And what I like to use is that you grey out the text once it's been read. Because again, the human mind tends to go for the biggest text. So if you have a very bright heading, their eyes will generally creep back to the heading. So I'm not going to do an entire presentation on broccoli. I just want to get the point across about limiting and keeping it focused. So, 5 ways to prepare broccoli. Soak it in salted water and go on and explain why. Cut it into thin slices and boiling does X, Y, Z. Cube it in olive oil. Olive oil adds blah, 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 blah. And grate it and add onions. Now, technically it doesn't matter, but do you see how no matter where I go, by graying out the text, your eyes will stay with the presentation, not glance all over the place. So graying out and just making what point you're discussing the highlight is very important. Making the highlighted area your focus point. And you can go back and forward, keeping the concentration of your audience. And again, I repeat it in the beginning, these are bullet points. You should not fill it with data. You should know what you're presenting, so that when I'm saying grate it and add onions, then I can go on to why add onions to broccoli. I haven't got a faintest idea why you'd want to do that. But again, these are bullet points as reminders for you as to the message you want to get across, not tons and tons of data on a slide that the customer or the audience can read directly themselves. Now, it's very different doing a big presentation to a boardroom presentation. When there's a boardroom presentation, you may have as little as 7, 8, 12, 14 people in the audience. And there's a few key points that you need to do when presenting. Always make constant eye contact. There is nothing worse than the following. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to discuss broccoli. Well, first we're going to soak it in water. Let me look at the ceiling. Let me look at my shoes. Let me look at the air conditioning. Oh, back to the ceiling. Now, if I'm an audience member and the presenter is looking all over the place, I've lost interest in the presenter. So keep constant eye contact with your audience. Now, that doesn't mean staring. Let's go through the basic presentation rules. Keep eye contact with one person for 20 seconds. This is so hard to do, but it so works. So you start presenting, pick someone in the audience, talk to them, eye to eye for 20 seconds, 15 to 20 seconds. Then pick someone else in the audience and maintain contact with them for 10 to 15 seconds, 20 seconds. Do not glance up, glance down, look at the shoes, dart all over the place. It's a hard thing to learn, but when you've mastered it, it makes everyone in the audience feel that you're talking to them directly. Randomly select the next person to focus on. Do not get into a pattern. Do not focus on the person that you believe is important. You may believe one person in that audience is the key player, but there could be somebody else quietly sit in the background. Treat everybody equal. Also, don't focus on the person that keeps smiling at you and nodding in agreement. I've got an ally in the audience. No, the person may just be a very happy person. So even the quiet person sitting in the corner, give them their 20 seconds. This one is a great one, and I've used it often. If you get someone that keeps heckling, keeps saying yes but, or oh what about, start answering them and explain where you stand on whatever topic you're discussing. But about 10 seconds before you're going to finish, move your gaze to somebody else on the opposite side of the room and keep eye contact with them. Do not glance back at the heckler or they will re-engage. Never say that's a good question. Always found that when you say that was a good question, the previous person that asked you a question will go, well, why wasn't mine a good question? You never need to say that it's a good question. And never point at people in the audience. Always keep your hand face up. Open hand gestures as a point. Do not turn your hand over and point with an actual finger. Open-handed gestures work superbly. And a hard one, I do it myself still. Really try to drop the ums and ers between gaps. Silence is okay.